Merlin Starter is an Bitcoin Layer 2 launchpad based on Merlin chain. We're dedicated to providing that framework and infrastructure for companies to basically launch their tokens, their product offering within the Bitcoin ecosystem.
You could have developed on any layer 1. Why did you choose to be a part of the Bitcoin ecosystem?
So we've personally been invested in Bitcoin since 2016. Obviously, it's the oldest and most secure network on the planet. And essentially it has the largest market cap. We're focused on unleashing that market cap, so creating that capital efficiency within the market. To date, it's arguably been a store of value, an untapped gold mine, and it's about providing that facility and utility for Bitcoin. The developer mentality within the Bitcoin ecosystem is just unprecedented. Everyone might be scaling and developing different solutions, but then those learnings are obviously easily shared because we are all on the same mindset and the same mission, which is to scale the adoption of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that's what's fundamental here.
And if the work you're doing also aligns with all your core values as a human, like you said, you love it, it's your occupation and your purpose, like all rolled up in one.
I feel at home.
Yeah.
I think if you can bounce out of bed and it doesn't feel like work, you're doing the right thing. I do honestly foresee and imagine sitting there one day and my kids or my grandkids are talking about these applications, and they don't need to know that we played a hand in it. It's just the fact that it's out there and it's being utilised, which is key. And how that ends up shaping the world, government policy, fiscal policies, you name it, that's going to be a beautiful thing.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Archi Watkins, the business leader, blockchain advocate, and public speaker. You are the co-founder of Merlin Starter, a groundbreaking IDO launchpad and layer 2 accelerator that is dedicated to supporting the growth of decentralized projects in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Merlin Starter is committed to issuing Bitcoin native assets across platforms, fostering innovation, and bringing new value to the Bitcoin network and its users. Your ultimate goal is to shine a light on the current state of the financial system and the limited options available. You believe that free markets will allow people to transfer their wealth without prejudice, and have said that Bitcoin, DeFi, and self-sovereignty offer the only true gateway to financial freedom and choice. Archie, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great having you here. I want to say and start by saying that Merlin Starter is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures, the world's first media-powered investment firm, where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Archie, we're super excited to be part of this journey with you. So let's jump in. Tell me, what is Merlin Starter?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here, first of all, and obviously the support. Merlin Starter, as you said, is an Bitcoin Layer 2 launchpad based on Merlin chain. So I think you did an amazing introduction. We're dedicated to providing that framework and infrastructure for companies to basically launch their tokens, their product offering within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that's on Merlin chain at present.
Okay, gotcha. And it's built and it's live and it's to just get to allow companies access to that specific Bitcoin layer 2 and to start launching products around this concept of building things on Bitcoin.
Yeah, correct. So it's live on Merlin chain at present. So we've had 2 successful IDOs to date. Companies come to us, they obviously want to either go through our accelerated incubation program or they're a fully fledged business as it is. They come to us to launch their tokens, get that exposure, get that level of crowd funding investment from a global audience. And yeah, it's been quite successful to date. The first IDO was a 20 million raise, and there was 500 million committed from 50,000 participants. And then the second IDO was a 2 million raise with 35,000 participants. So as you can see from the audience, the participation, the amount of money, which is floating globally, we're only just starting to tick it off basically. But comparing that to the EVM side of the fence, we actually set a few new records in the industry, which shows you the appetite and obviously the demand and participation from the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, you've got a really smart team. You've personally been in this, blockchain ecosystem or been aware of it since 2016. You could have developed on any layer one, right? You could have stuck with the EVM and Ethereum. You could have gone to Solana or AVAX or Cardano or, these days there's a new layer one dropping every week, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are relevant. Why did you choose to be a part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is still untested? You had to make that decision before the Bitcoin ETF happened.
Yeah.
Why?
For us, it was very simple. So we've personally been invested in Bitcoin since 2016. Obviously, it's the oldest and most secure network on the planet. And essentially, it has obviously the largest market cap. So I think as of today, 1.4 trillion. Now for us, it's, we're focused on unleashing that market cap, so creating that capital efficiency within the market. To date, it's arguably been a store of value, an untapped gold mine per se, and it's about providing that facility and utility for Bitcoin. So with layer twos coming out on the market, as a business, part of our due diligence, and we were obviously looking long term. We wanted to assess, obviously, the current scalability within the Bitcoin ecosystem and how different layer twos were scaling and providing that infrastructure. So for us, obviously, we saw a lot of success on the EVM side of the fence, ZK rollups, etc. And Merlin chain has done a fantastic job of incorporating not only the original layer one consensus security and algorithm, which is what it should be built on, but then incorporating ZK rollups, etc., and decentralized Oracle networks. There's a lot of future tech and integrations that have happened on Merlin chain. So that made it extremely attractive because not just for the here and now and the present to provide that significant product offering for companies, which if they come through our launchpad and launch on Merlin chain, for example, then they get all those benefits as well. But for the long term, that's what's key. The integrations, the future asset integrations, the network holistic perspective on how assets can migrate from EVM over to Merlin chain, for example. That interoperability provides developers, retail, consumer levels, integrations which others are going to struggle to achieve. That's our opinion in the long run.
It's been interesting to look at all these layer twos for Bitcoin, and they've really exploded, I'd say, in the last 9 months or so. And it's a huge narrative that's out there, and everyone's arguing about which one's going to be the best. And obviously there's networks like Lightning in the past that have tried to kind of provide fast solutions to the Bitcoin network. I actually interviewed Dr. Munib Ali on the show a couple of years ago, and he was building stacks and still is.
Yep.
And I remember at the time it was wild, Archie, because I interviewed him and he said, "Brian, we're the only person building on Bitcoin." And I remember I went through the top 100 market caps on CoinMarketCap, and none of them were building on Bitcoin. And I remember walking out of the studio and I said to one of my colleagues, I said, "You know what? If I ran a fund, I would put a bet on this because it seems like a non-correlated asset that could have some upside." And then of course we saw stacks like really explode as everyone started to embrace that ecosystem. But you had to make a decision to go with Merlin. Merlin, I think, is one of the few that's embracing not only Bitcoin, but also EVM and wants to provide this kind of simultaneous layer two solution to both. That's pretty innovative, in that sense. How did you decide, because it wasn't the earliest one that was building and there were stacks and Lightning and things. It's a tough decision to make. Literally, you went all in with the name because you're now Merlin Starter. Yep. And so that's a decision you had to make. How did you make that decision? Because right now everybody's evaluating layer twos and no one knows which one's going to win.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest key integrations for us to consider was the ZK rollups, and with the EVM compatibility. So Merlin Chain's done a fantastic job of obviously providing that integration off the bat. And where ZK rollups are concerned, we've had the proven technology, we've had the success stories on the EVM side, like with all the ZK rollups within the EVM industry. Now, for us, obviously looking long term, with the way that we perceive Bitcoin to scale as an ecosystem, ZK rollups is going to play a pivotal role within that industry. And you're dead right. We have to pay homage to the Lightning Network. I think it was definitely it was too good. How do I phrase this? It was too good, but too early for its time. Right. So it provided that solution, but obviously the mass adoption and the user base wasn't there ready for it. And then obviously Stack's done an amazing job, as you said, but a different take on obviously its consensus and validation algorithm. Now, when we looked at mass adoption, and we looked at obviously what developers are going to need, what they're already familiar with, ZK rollups played quite a large part in that. And then we obviously looked at scalability, and ZK rollups, that tick that box as well. So for Merlin Chain to already make that decision for us and have those integrations ready, it made complete sense to put our flag in the sand and join that ecosystem.
Now ZK stands for zero knowledge. And the idea is that you can really speed up and optimize a lot of these decisions that are being made on the blockchain that were slower without it. And again, the industry really embraced it over the last year. I think Polygon went all in on ZK.
Oh, 100%. So zero knowledge proof transactions. So the ability to have finalized transactions, and we're talking thousands, tens of thousands of transactions, all finalized and then relayed back to the core, consensus algorithm, essentially. So it's taking a lot of transactions off the core blockchain solution, obviously Bitcoin, and then just making it a lot faster, speeding it up, making it more cost efficient. And that's what we need for obviously future adoption and scalability.
Yeah, and Ethereum needs that badly as well. Yeah. I was at the Satoshi Roundtable in Dubai. It was my first time there. It was the 10th annual event. And it's this kind of invite-only, unconference, so many OGs there. People that don't go to conferences are there. It was 5 days at the Palm in Dubai. We couldn't disclose the location. We weren't allowed to put any social media posts, but we went deep on the topic du jour, and it was BRC20. It was building on the Bitcoin ecosystem. Munib was there. A lot of people were there. And I sat in and listened to a lot of these conversations. And honestly, the biggest topic there was probably building on Bitcoin. Yeah. And it was interesting to see where we were. I mean, I'd heard a lot of talk of BRC20, but I walked away from that conference realizing that no one really had figured it out, and it was still a little clunky. Now, we saw runes come from there. Obviously, a lot of OGs were there on Bitcoin. And the big concern I think Bitcoiners have is security when you go to layer 2. It's the one thing where people say, yes, we agree. It's the most decentralized network in the world. It's proven itself. 13 years has never been down. It's the biggest supercomputer on the planet by a factor of, I think, 1,500 compared to CERN's supercomputer. But that's great. But if your layer 2 doesn't have security, then it doesn't matter. And so a lot of people are still trying to build on Bitcoin, which has so many challenges. Like, do you think about some of those issues? Are those going to be ongoing concerns to bake in that security? Has Merlin Chain figured that out, or is that something that'll always be a process of keeping it secure?
No, I think that's why Merlin Chain really stands out, to be honest with you. It's utilizing that underlying Bitcoin core layer consensus algorithm whilst providing that scalability solution through ZK rollups. And then obviously having the EVM compatibility, or shall I say virtual machine compatibility, which obviously the smart contracts, etc. That really starts to open up the floodgates for different applications like DEXs, AMMs, perps, you name it. Anything with a smart contract in it can obviously run on that application. So we're seeing that starting to be incorporated across the variety of different Bitcoin layer 2s. But that's where I say the Bitcoin ecosystem for me has always been number one. So the developer mentality within the Bitcoin ecosystem is just unprecedented as far as I can say. Everyone might be scaling and developing different solutions, But then those learnings are obviously easily shared because we are all on the same mindset and the same mission, which is to scale the adoption of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that's what's fundamental here. It's about reaching that end goal, essentially. And so when we look at the market caps or the TVL, which is currently on the Bitcoin side versus the EVM side, I firmly believe that the TVL, total value locked, some of it will migrate over from the EVM side. But then as we unlock that Bitcoin market cap itself and really unleash that capital efficiency, that's when we're going to start seeing the Bitcoin ecosystem explode. And the beauty of the Bitcoin layer 2s, obviously being directly connected to the core consensus algorithm, is that it's utilizing the Bitcoin, obviously, for transaction fees, etc., at the root of all the transactions. So everything that's getting built is benefiting the Bitcoin ecosystem.
And for people that are watching and listening to us, I think part of the reason that people love the Bitcoin chain is because ultimately it's probably the most censorship resistant probably database in the world.
100%.
If it's written on that Bitcoin chain, you could argue it's very hard to unwrite it. And for someone who's been censored before, you could argue, you could put it on the Ethereum chain, but it's like, well, yeah, but if AWS goes down, we don't know what's going to happen. But with Bitcoin, if you could literally inscribe things on there, it's very hard to undo that. It really is as close to immutable as you probably can find. And
100%.
That in itself has such high value that make people want to be associated with this chain for the future. And that's real world assets, everything being tokenized. Yep. Ultimately, if it's on the Bitcoin chain, you can probably sleep well at night that it's going to be there forever.
Couldn't agree more. And to be honest with you, I think in the future, it wouldn't surprise me if we see centralized banks making transactions utilizing Bitcoin, because it is the most safe and secure network. To move hundreds of billions of dollars in Bitcoin within 20 minutes, that's a significant improvement. And I do honestly foresee that world coming. Right. It's just a matter of time.
And they're going to want to trust something.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
100%.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's this thing on the internet called the Wayback Machine, where you can go back and see what was on the internet at different points in time. Mm-hmm. There's also some interesting points where people have said that's been changed, that actually somebody's gone in, I won't point the finger, but actually messed with the Wayback Machine to where it actually doesn't reflect what was on the internet in the past. And it's a great example that things that we think are set in stone aren't. And until you can really have it on something that can't be tampered with by governments or media companies or technology companies, which are more powerful than governments, then you don't really know. And again, he's told me before we started, history is written by the victors. But Yep. If you can rewrite history in the future, then you don't really know what your past is.
100%.
So again, Bitcoin brings something that people think of Bitcoin maybe as a store of value, or maybe as a supercomputer, maybe as a super highway, as Cathie Wood says. But it's interesting to think of it as maybe the only source of truth out there. And you can describe anything on there, from a book to potentially a movie to anything. Right?
Why shouldn't our history be inscribed as it's happening now in real time?
Yeah.
That provide that immutability for future generations.
Yeah.
That's not a bad vision to have, really, is it?
I was talking with someone recently, and I said, what if someone from North Korea could inscribe something on a block of Bitcoin, and we could all see it, and it couldn't be censored? And they were like, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yep.
It's almost a form of pure human communication that can't be tampered with.
Yep.
In a world where we have to really start wondering where our information comes from.
100%. And we have to be more vigilant on that as well, with AI coming out, etc.
Right.
Unfortunately, root source databases, or shall I say applications, are only as good as the root source databases that they're connected to, right? So if we look at the big players like Google, Meta, etc., where AI applications are concerned, that's going down a whole different rabbit hole, but it's all still interlinked with the immutability of Bitcoin, etc.
Yeah, and it's important because people might say, oh, I don't care about crypto, I'm not invested, my money's in my bank. But it's like, okay, what about your digital your identity? Mm-hmm. What if in the future your identity could be altered or changed, and the only way you know is if it's inscribed on the Bitcoin chain? Yep. And so it actually is going to affect everybody. And then with AI, what if there's a digital version of you out there and we can't prove that it's you?
Yep.
So this will become important to everybody very soon.
It's happening a hell of a lot quicker than people can think.
Yeah.
And it's normally, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really realize it's happened until it's staring them in the face. But then that's where I think in the digital age, with the developers that are in this industry, you know, advocates of Web3 and decentralization, self-sovereignty, etc. The more I go into this rabbit hole, the more we're actually all banding together, not against the governments, I don't mean like that, but to actually utilize the technology in an altruistic way, as opposed to a censorship surveillance method. You know, there's two varying different degrees of execution here, right? So it's up to us as individuals to decide what side of the fence we're on, I guess.
What do you think of ordinals and, you know, runes and some of these innovations that have now been built on the Bitcoin network? I was at the very first Ordinals Summit in Singapore last year, and it was kind of strange. Everyone told me it was like a throwback to the early Bitcoin days. Guys were walking around in costumes, and there were no you know, massive 50-meter long Coinbase booths. It was like this old school vibe of let's build it to build it. Yep. And they were excited. Domo was there and some of the other innovators of ordinals. And it was just a really cool buzz as far as, you know, a little geeky, but a little bit, we're all on the same team doing something cool. What do you make of that? If people don't know, ordinals are kind of like NFTs on the Bitcoin chain. Then there were the BRC20 token protocol that could put tokens on that chain that's morphed into runes, and I don't know where it's going. The maxis like Kaiser, you know, they hate it apparently, although I think some are coming around. But they're here to stay, it seems. What do you think of that? Does that affect anything that you do going forward? Just your thoughts.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a fan of the innovation. So ultimately, the more use cases that we can put into the Bitcoin ecosystem, the higher the obviously utility demand that there is going to be to the root core, which is the Bitcoin asset, right? Then obviously you've got the validator system that continues to expand, etc., which adds to the security. So it's all this perpetual self-fulfilling mechanism in layman's terms. So where ordinals runes are concerned, that level of innovation is important. Because it's going to keep stretching the scalability of the blockchain itself. Certainly not going to break it, and you know, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But that level of innovation obviously then attracts a whole different, say, retail clientele who are interested in digital artwork. You know, they wouldn't. If they weren't attracted into Bitcoin before, but then they're a fan of digital artwork, all of a sudden they're attracted to ordinals. So that brings more consumer base, more utility, etc., more monetization. And now obviously with runes, a different variant of scalability solution, that opens up a whole new pillar for innovations, which is amazing. So like I said, everything then links back to the root core consensus, you know, algorithm, Bitcoin itself. And that's what we need to do. We need to keep pushing the boundaries, create those different utilities to attract those varying, you know, market demographics. So for us as a launchpad, it's very important for us to keep up to date with the integrations, which we are doing. Like we're fully up to date, which then obviously from varying networks, Merlin chain, obviously Bitcoin layer 2s, we can provide that launchpad facility for all of those different types of assets, which is necessary.
Would you do a launch for runes, or is that really a different market because they're built on the actual Bitcoin layer 1 itself?
No, we can do a launch for runes.
Okay.
So we've got runes integrations already performed, ordinals, BRC20s, even Ethereum assets. But we are concentrating at the moment on Bitcoin layer 2s. You know, first and foremost, how do we scale Merlin chain? You know, and attract user base and adoption there. But then how can we develop and grow our business, which is Merlin Starter, to incorporate other Bitcoin layer 2s and provide that successful launchpad facility. And then we continue to expand outwards.
And so, I was going to ask you, plans going forward, you are going to build Merlin Starter on other layer 2s?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're kind of looking at the ones and seeing kind of where to play, I guess, first Bitcoin layer 2s and then maybe other layer 2s?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So obviously we have that integration fully, solved. So Bitcoin layer 2s at the moment, looking at the prominent ones, and there's some really high quality Bitcoin layer 2s as well. I will say, and this is maybe personal preference, but Merlin chain is number one. It's where we started, so I don't mind putting that on paper. But obviously to be successful, to attract more user base across the Merlin chain, it's just widening that funnel, right? And different Bitcoin layer 2s offer different solutions as well, and a different way of securing the underlying Bitcoin ecosystem. So take CoreDAO, for instance. You run a validator on their system, you have to get mining support and delegate the hash rate to your validator to then obviously support their network. I think that's a pretty cool mechanism because it's further decentralization of the underlying core ecosystem. And then obviously you've got the thriving communities and different applications within these various Bitcoin layer 2s as well. So if we move quickly as a launchpad and we execute, which we are doing, we can provide that broader support across the Bitcoin ecosystem.
What's missing right now in the layer 2s on Bitcoin? Are we missing like a proper DEX and swapping facilities and the other things? I mean, that's all necessary to bring users, right?
Yeah, correct. So the bridging facilities are coming. There's one of our partners, Particle Networks, doing a phenomenal job there. They're
live, right?
Yeah, they're live.
I think I used them to play around in there. Yeah,
we incorporated them very, very early on. Integrated their wallet facility within our launchpad. So they're concentrating on not just account abstraction, which allows you to move your profile, across various dApps very, very seamlessly. They're also then moving towards account abstraction. So the ability, for instance, to be on let's say a swap, a DEX in the Bitcoin ecosystem, but have your assets in the Ethereum ecosystem. So you can then pay for the transaction fees within Bitcoin from your assets already in Ethereum. So it saves you all of that bridging, saves you the underlying hassles. Now think about what that does to for developers, for user base, for ease of onboarding, for migration of assets, etc. It just accelerates and provide that easy one-stop solution. So when we are looking at obviously our partners that we're integrating, it's incredibly important that we align with people who are building those specific solutions, which align with our overall vision as well. So that's basically our mission for the next 0 to 6 months.
So important to do this. I mean, one thing that's nice is that we put the Merlin chain on our MetaMask wallets, which was great for us and our people in our academy and stuff, so they can get that right away. Obviously, MetaMask has done some interesting things recently. They have a portfolio tool, they have a bridging tool, which they didn't exist, I think 6 months ago or 12 months ago, it wasn't there. Again, anything like that brings a new user into the space and allows them to do a little bit more. But we still have a little bit of a ways to go, right? Yeah. And so you want to just make sure that these things are all integrated to where this is easy and seamless, right?
Well, at the moment in the Bitcoin ecosystem, we don't have the fiat onboarding ramps in which the Ethereum ecosystem does. Now,
via centralized exchanges or even a couple DEXs might have that, right?
Yeah, correct. So that's why it's very important within the Bitcoin ecosystem to build that foundational infrastructure, like the bridging, the wallet integrations, etc. Because why Merlin chain is so important, obviously the EVM compatibility, there's no reason why we can't link straight through to those onboarding and offboarding ramps. So just consider your tech stack layer as different slices, and where those onboarding ramps obviously fit in, we're just connecting the dots. So that's why, as an ecosystem, it's quite important to know where we want to be in the next 6 to 12 months, what our launchpad is going to look like, and how it's molding and obviously building with the broader ecosystem. But then also what additional products we need to scale this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, are you planning on building some of these products? Are you planning on helping those launch, or what are your plans kind of going forward?
Yeah, I think that's where we are uniquely positioned. So we not only are we a launchpad, but we're obviously an accelerator incubation facility as well. So for any size of business as well. So it could be a fledgling, just getting started and they need full marketing, development, etc. support, to someone who's already fully established and just wants to obviously utilize the launchpad area. But for us, like I said in the beginning, our mission is to unleash that capital efficiency within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And to truly do that, after assessing the EVM chains and the success of layer 2s, consider all those layer 2s as isolated islands though. and everything needs to be bridged. Everything, if you want to transition your assets, you have to be bridging them from one island to the other. And for user adoption and ease, that's obviously a bit painful, right? But to maximize, DeFi, decentralized finance, which is what we're focusing on in the beginning, you need really a scalable layer 3 solution that overrides, or should I say, oversits, is an overarching solution to all the Bitcoin layer 2s, and then potentially, scaling out to the Ethereum networks as well. So, looking at us holistically, we're not only in the future want to have a multi-chain, network agnostic launchpad, but we will soon be launching a layer 3 scalability solution, which will sit across all Bitcoin layer 2s, Ethereum in the future, and provide that decentralized yield aggregation layer. Because if you can provide a home for people to really utilize their assets in a most efficient way, and that includes Bitcoin, etc., and provide that one-stop shop for yield aggregation, take the complexities and the hassles out of it, then all of a sudden you have a layer 3 solution which is truly scalable. It's going to bring the TVL, the asset base, it's going to bring the user adoption, and then we can scale that out to be a true Bitcoin layer 3 solution, which then opens up the floodgates for future and more high TPS type applications.
When will we get DeFi on Bitcoin?
DeFi on Bitcoin?
Yeah, or Bitcoin DeFi. Like, when will we really get that, on
that
Bitcoin?
Surge?
Yeah, people actually using it. Where actually people are now getting yield from their Bitcoin and they're playing in all these DeFi products. Like we saw the DeFi summer, of Ethereum back in 20.
Yeah, that was
When's
exciting.
that happening? Because it hasn't happened yet, has it? The infrastructure's not there, right?
Some might argue against that, Brian, I hate to say.
Okay. Where is it happening?
Well, there are DeFi applications across various Bitcoin layer 2s.
Okay.
But they are isolated islands, again, at the moment. And you have to bridge, your assets across. So providing that one-stop shop layer 3 solution could be a significant step towards, that DeFi summer. But I hate to say this, it's also market awareness. There's a lot of distraction within the market. Meme coins are doing really well. And I'm not saying meme coins don't belong in Web3 whatsoever, because obviously they do. Solana's been a great network advocate for meme coins and that scalability solution. But there's a certain level of sophistication to meme coins, which we're going to start seeing branch out across the Bitcoin ecosystem, I believe, in the future. But it's about bringing those users, attracting that right adoption to the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Okay.
And that's from a developer's perspective for the applications, to develop the right applications to attract the user base.
Right. So you get the users there, then you can get the developers there, and then they can develop some with what the users want. But right now, maybe they're running after the meme coin volume.
Yeah, I think some people, unfortunately, and we've seen it through multiple bull markets, they follow the shiny object, right? And if there's a massive light on, obviously, meme coins right now, then that's where everyone's, got their attention. Solana, and then it was Base, etc. But I think that's why what's happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem is so under the radar still, because there is a certain level of adoption there. It just hasn't seen that boom at the moment as you described it.
But it's definitely one of the I'd say it's one of the top 5 hot, segments of the market is building on the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like 100%. I said, at Socia Roundtable, it was definitely top 3. And it's something that's been quite a big narrative this year. Obviously, ETF didn't hurt, and then the massive ecosystem. And then all the volume going into the ETFs. We've had the Ethereum ETF approved. Maybe I'll get your thoughts on that. But also, we've seen the volume. I think we just had a record couple days in Ethereum, in Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, Bitcoin, yeah.
So that's incredible. I actually think there's a Bitcoin meme coin, Dog to the Moon or something, that's doing well. I mean, I'm starting to get to know my meme coins, but I think that's doing well, which is maybe as a sign that Bitcoin can also take some of that meme coin hype.
Honestly, I think it's the next trend within the Bitcoin. Not major trend, obviously, but I think that's an additional pillar that's going to sprout and attract that user base. Why not? Because we've seen what's worked. We've seen what's worked in the Ethereum side, or Solana, etc., or Binance Smart Chain, whatever it is. We can take and cherry pick what's winning on that side of the fence and bring it over to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that's what I love about the developer mentality within Bitcoin. We can move very, very quickly as an ecosystem, work together to achieve it.
And the ordinals success showed how much you can unlock value. And I mean, that should get everyone's attention. If that happened, you could see that meme coins could be even bigger.
Yep.
And that's a lot of money for miners, for developers, for speculators, huge Chinese market there as well. I mean, just all sorts of things happening there.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on meme coins? If you take a zoom out, 30,000 view, what's your take on them, honestly? As a phenomenon, are they here to stay? Are they a net positive? What do you think?
I think they're definitely here to stay. I think they're highly speculative though, obviously, and they come with a significant amount of risk. I'm unfortunately a true believer in underlining utility. So I actually don't own very meme coins, many meme coins whatsoever. I look at the fundamentals, and for me to invest my money, and this isn't financial advice obviously, but I look at the fundamentals, and I have to sleep easy at night. If meme coins, unfortunately I've seen a lot of good and bad stories, but essentially the investors which are going into meme coins know exactly what they're doing as well. They know what they're stepping into, and they have that degen mentality, which they enjoy it. Maybe it's better than going to the casino, etc., or betting on a horse, and that's what they enjoy. But for me, that's not my cup of tea.
It's an interesting phenomenon. Again, it can't be dismissed.
No.
If you look at Doge and Shiba, they held their coin market cap positions all through the bear market and didn't budge. And you got places like Franklin Templeton that are now covering them as an asset class.
Yep.
And those two alone, you have to give credit where credit's due. I mean, they're not going anywhere. They didn't go anywhere. And now you see the rise of the Pepes and the Bretts and some of the others. I mean, Pepe's now number 20 market cap. And so you could say it's a flash in the pan, but it's probably not.
Well, Shiba today, I mean, personally, that was one of the few I stepped into. But they had a very good DeFi solution as well. Like they had a lot of, obviously, extremely good marketing and branding. But yeah, they had some underlying utilities and products which were extremely successful as well.
Yeah, I think they're rolling out more as well. I met one of the Shiba founders on a yacht in Dubai, as you do. And I tried to take a picture with him and he wasn't doxxed, so he said no. And they were, I think, relaunching the Shiba, ecosystem with all these new layers and all these new, platforms, much like EVM.
So, yeah, do you think Doge is still going to be the cryptocurrency of choice for X? I think Elon's definitely a fan.
I mean, Elon's a fan, but he seems to also like a lot of humor. So, so who knows? His narrative has kind of helped and hurt that coin, I think. Yeah. But no, I'm not necessarily thinking it's going to be the new layer one of X. But it's still going to be relevant, I think.
100%.
And again, meme coins are interesting phenomena. I mean, I had an argument with someone the other day, and I said, Bitcoin was a meme coin for many years. Let's be honest. It was just a bunch of crypto geeks geeking out about a coin that had no value, really. And yet they all loved it. They loved talking about it, buying it, kind of trading it amongst each other.
Yep.
And it had no fundamentals, no value. So if you want to hate on a meme coin, you got to think that maybe you also were part of that for a while. And so, look, I've had Yatsu here of Animoca Brands, and he used to say, crypto is a store of value and NFTs are a store of culture, is what he used to say. Now, you could argue now that the memes are now a store of culture. Somehow, people want to group together. They want to be part of a club. People that buy iPhones want to talk about iPhones. People that vote Republican want to talk about that. I mean, people like coming together in groups. And so it's a phenomenon that's here to stay. Yes, it's highly speculative, but if it also brings in more eyeballs into this ecosystem, it's
100%.
It's a net positive.
100%.
And now some people say, at least they're being honest, this thing has no utility.
Yeah.
Whereas other things are purporting to be these other things. I don't know. This whole concept of intrinsic value, I don't know. I don't even know if I even try to think of anything like that anymore, because all the gold people say Bitcoin has no extrinsic value. It's like, well, okay. It's just the US dollar.
I think that argument's pretty mute now, to be honest with you.
It is. But it'd be nice to see if the Bitcoin system grabs it. And then, the other thing I was thinking, we're so spoiled in the Ethereum or EVM world with this infrastructure, right? Whether it's your MetaMask wallet or your bridges or your multiple DEXs or like you said, your fiat on-ramps. Like, we're really spoiled. You can do so much with your Aves and your Uniswaps and all the competitors that just doesn't exist really as deeply on Bitcoin and the layer twos. And that's what we need. probably just to get more people involved. And that's what you're going to try to build, right?
Yeah, 100%. So obviously we have the launchpad facility, layer 3 yield aggregation layer, which is coming. But most importantly, it's connecting those dots because there's no reason why we can't connect those dots all the way through and utilize the benefits of the EVM on and off ramps, for example, or the decentralized swapping facilities, which are already there. So it's, as a launchpad, for example, why can't a prominent video game come to us as a launchpad, launch their token, but then go and basically run on Arbitrum, for example. So basically get access to that Bitcoin ecosystem capital, all the participation within it, and then launch a token on Arbitrum. There's those kind of decentralized avenues are coming.
That's the exciting future, right?
Yeah,
because right now we live in a world where each layer 1 is like its own world, right? With its own rules and its own culture, and they don't even like talking to each other. Yeah. And they really associate it like, oh, you're there and I'm here. But yeah, what a beautiful future where you could tap anything you wanted. Like capital markets, you could tap any market, any currency, or technology. Like we don't understand all the details of our tech. We just want the tech that works the best, right?
100%. So at the retail level, 100%. We just need to break those barriers because that's what the technology is all about. So, I'm sure if you go back to the very first developers of Bitcoin and even who's actually present there right now, and ask them some deep-rooted questions in their thoughts of decentralization and interoperability, etc. That's the future that everyone's building towards. So I think we might end up with a scenario because obviously when we have this mass adoption, we're going to have still, gaming networks, investment networks, DeFi networks, art networks, etc. But why can't that all be interconnected? There's absolutely no reason.
It's interesting. Like you think, like 25 or 50 years from now, maybe no one will even talk about the layer 1s and layer 2s. It'll just be something that works. You think about, all the different railroads in America that merged. You look at the tube in London, you go around and you look at these lines. Those used to be all independent private companies that ran their own line and had nothing to do with the other lines. You had to buy a separate ticket. And then they were all nationalized at the war, and now it's one network. You never think about it. Look at the car companies like General Motors. General Motors was an aggregate of 8, 10 different car companies, from Dodge to Chrysler, all these things, right? So there's a history of this happening and then all coming together.
I think we've had the test bed. We've got the history in the Web 2 world, if people want to call it the Web 2 corporations. But then when we look at those overarching standards and frameworks, regulatory frameworks, etc., the ability to build decentralized applications that then are successful in the Web 2 world as far as regulations and framework are concerned. Decentralized applications that can't be tapped with. They can't be changed, within political party zones, basically every 3 or 4 years, for example. We've got the ability to create applications which withstand those times. To
continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.